Everyone, welcome to South Coast Reptiles. In today's video we're going to be going over a care guide for the much loved leopard geckos. So to start the video off is, what is a leopard gecko? So a leopard gecko is a small species of gecko primarily found in the Middle East regions like Afghanistan, Pakistan. Some places in India they can be found, but generally they're small, not diurnal geckos. So obviously that by diurnal we mean they're more active during that dawn dusk periods. These aren't daytime out or nighttime, they prefer that dawn, a couple of hours of dawn and dusk is when you normally find them out and about feeding. But another thing to think out is that there's a reason leopard geckos are so popular. They are probably one of the easiest reptiles to keep in terms of like ease of care. They don't require it too hot, they can survive, they do quite well. If you're a little bit out here and there, it's not a big deal for them, they're quite hardy. But saying that, we're going to go straight into the actual meat of the care guide. So we're going to start off with their enclosures. So we here at South Coast Reptiles, we provide a 3 foot by 1.5 by 1.5 foot enclosure with our leopard geckos. We find that this gives them enough room for not only for really good thermal gradient of that 31 down to the low 20s, it also gives them enough room for you to put enough decorations, hides, clutter, fake plants, real whatever you want to do. It gives you a lot of space to put whatever you want in there. And once you've got all that space, you can put, you know, leopard gecko's got loads of stuff to explore. They're not going to get bored. They've got loads to look at, and obviously when you feed them they can hunt, they can actually do their natural hunting behaviours. So we just prefer to provide a 3 foot by 1.5 by 1.5. Always rule of thumb, bigger is always better, but that's the cage that we provide with our leopard geckos. Bugger. Obviously, as we said, with these enclosures you need to put some stuff in them to act as like entertainment, enrichment for some things you need. For prime example, you need to put some hides in there. Normally we advise to have at least 2 hides. So that'll be 1 hide on the hot end and 1 hide on your cold end. This just allows your leopard gecko, if like during the day, say, if it wants to be a bit warmer during the day, it's got somewhere to hide on the hot end, or if it wants to cool down, it can do the other side to cool down. But obviously, we usually use something like this. This is just a small hide. This is the hide that's with most of our leopard geckos. And this just provides them, what we normally do is we stick it into the substrate a little bit so it leaves a little bit of a gap, and they'll actually dig a little bit of a hole in there. So they get to kind of create their own little burrows, if you get what I mean. But obviously going on from hides, you'll put other stuff in there, so like decorations, so like fake plants, logs, twigs, bowl rocks, anything like that, just to encourage enrichment. But obviously you've got to put something in there first, and the first thing I put in there is your substrate. So the substrate that we use for our leopard geckos is this stuff. So this is the Habitat Leopard Gecko Terrain. It's quite a new one, they only just came out with it this year. You do also get some of the older ones like Leo Life, which is a bit more sand based. Either one's good enough. I personally prefer the new Habitat ones, but everyone's welcome to choose either one or choose what you want to use. Some people use a quite heavy play sand mixed with topsoil to get it to do it. It's one way you can do it, but we just prefer getting the bags of it in because it just saves us some time and hassle. Right, as with all reptiles, they do require, well, I say most reptiles, they do require lighting and heating in order to survive in the UK, as obviously the UK is a cold and miserable place. Say that, but at the moment it's boiling hot. So heat waves, love ya. But we're going to start with your lighting. Now for lighting we use a UVB T5. So the one we use is this one. So this is the Arcadia 7% UVB. So it's an 8-watt light. This just provides, it's quite a weak UVB because leopard geckos don't require very high UVB. Some people don't even put UVB in with their geckos, but we just prefer to have UVB in with them because in honesty, that, you know, what's the harm in providing it, because it provides a day-night cycle for them, but also they can benefit from some UVB as well, and it's not very powerful, so it's not going to burn your leopard gecko, so it just isn't strong enough to do that. But obviously moving on to your heating aspects of your enclosures, a leopard gecko on a warm side in your basking spots, they should be looking at around 30, 31 degrees, 29 degrees, somewhere in that ballpark of the high, around about 30 degrees region. As long as you're around there somewhere, you'll be perfectly fine. But obviously to reach that, you need a heater. So what we use here, we use the Arcadia 100-watt daylight heaters. We use Arcadia lights for pretty much all our animals, to be fair. But the 100-watt heater we find is perfectly good enough. It doesn't need to get to ridiculous temperatures like a bearded dragon does. and it just gets to the right temperatures. But if you're using any kind of heat sources, any at all, heat mats, ceramics, solar lights, any heat source whatsoever, it has to be controlled by a thermostat. So that if for some reason your heat source, something goes wrong or something happens and your heat source goes bomb crazy, it doesn't cook your leopard gecko, because that is something that does happen on occasion for people. They don't have controlled heat sources and then they just go wild. So things that we use, for example, this is one of the thermostats we got. So this is just the Haberstat dimming thermostat. The dimming thermostat works for things like the solar bulb. If you've got a ceramic bulb, you can use pulse heaters, or if you've got heat mats, you can use a mat stat. Any one of them is good. Just make sure you get the right thermostat for what you're using. Otherwise, it just won't work properly. But yeah, as we said, 31 degrees at the hot end, your basking area. You put the probe on the basking area and it'll give you your right temperature. And then obviously, if basking area is about 31 degrees, your cold end can go down to as low as the low 20s, and to the low 20s. It's not, then leopard gecko can obviously choose if it wants to move from here to there. And then obviously your nighttime temperatures, it can drop down. If you're in the UK or if you're in a country that does similar temperatures to us, it can drop down to like 16, 17, 18 degrees at night. So it's not, you don't need a lot of nighttime heating. But if you do provide a nighttime heat, you want to be using a heat source that doesn't emit light, something like a deep heat projector or a ceramic bulb, just to keep the temperatures up. It won't be very often used, but it'd only kick in if the temperatures drop low enough. So that would be what you'd use for that. On to our feeding part of the video, and obviously with leopard geckos, they are strict insectivores. What this means is the leopard gecko's diet is almost entirely made up of insects. There's no vegetarians. There's not a bearded dragon which has a bit of greens, a bit of salad. They just want the bugs. They don't feed them veg, don't even provide them veg. They don't need it, they won't eat it, just want to stick to the bugs. So obviously we got things like these locusts. Don't know if you can see them hopping around in there. So obviously for young leopard geckos, what we usually use are what we call medium-sized locusts. They're not tiny, but they're just small enough that the baby leopard geckos can handle them. Then obviously as the leopard gecko gets bigger, you'll move up the sizes from medium to large to extra large. And if you have really big leopard geckos, you may end up with the adults, like Lizzie. Lizzie can eat the adults quite fine. So it all depends on the size of your leopard gecko. Other options for food include crickets, dubia roaches, waxworms, Maria worms, basically any kind of insect which is smaller than the gap in between their eyes. They can fit it down their gullet, they'll eat it. They're not picky eaters normally, but they will generally be fine. With the food, you need to supplement their diet because they're not getting things they would in the wild, mainly calcium. So obviously what we do is we use calcium. It's a little supplementation, and what we do with that is we put it on top of the feeder insects before we feed them. And obviously we chuck the feeder insects inside the cage with the leopard gecko. And obviously as the leopard gecko eats the insects, it eats the calcium as well, and that just helps promote bone growth and prevents things like metabolic bone disease, which obviously is not a good thing to deal with. So just put your supplements on top of your insects, put them in there, leopard gecko eats it. You can't really go wrong with it. They're quite easy to feed, easy to feed and that, so they're not really that bad, as long as you can deal with the bugs. You can deal with the bugs, you can deal with a leopard gecko. So the next part we're going to go over the leopard gecko is their handling and their temperament. So a bit of like their behaviour as pets. So as you can see here from Lizzie, she's quite calm. She's not in panic, she's not threatening and that. Obviously when you have baby leopard geckos, they can be a bit more flighty because they've not got used to you yet, but once they get to an adult stage, then normally as long as you've been handling them, spending some time with them, they will get quite chill with you because they've just got used to you. And they are very good, they are good temperament. Like, you know, the only thing to watch out for leopard gecko handling wise, I'd say, is that you just got to be aware of the fact that these aren't bearded dragons, these are not heavy lizards, these are quite soft small lizards. So you don't really want to be manhandling them. You don't want to be grabbing them and that. You just want to be, have your hand open like that and just let she saw a locust. And just let them choose where they want to go. Just kind of like guide them through your hands, no grabbing. And the only thing to really watch out for is you do not grab their tails. As leopard geckos have the ability to drop their tails, it will regrow, but it won't never look the same again. And it'll just be like a small stumpy tail rather than the nice tail that she has now. So there's a bit of a bonus bit at the end of the video. We're going to put a few bonus things, so a few things to watch out for. Obviously with leopard geckos, some health problems that can come up, not very, if you do the right care, it won't come up as often, but they can still come up, is metabolic bone disease can be one of them. This is where their bones don't develop properly, and then if that happens, you're basically not giving them enough calcium, but that's one side of things, something to look out for. Impaction for young leopard geckos can be quite a bad thing. With baby, really young leopard geckos, it's probably best to keep them on a paper towel substrate. So just put some paper towels along the bottom of the enclosure. It just prevents problems. Like normally if you get impaction problems, it normally is the younger animals that get, not the older ones. Once they're adults, you can put them on normal substrate like we use, and normally you'll be completely fine. It's just for the really small babies, you may want to put paper towel for the first few months, just let them get a bit bigger first. Another point to thing, which is something that trips up a lot of people, which no one talks about, is leopard gecko hunger strikes. They are very, very rare, but they do happen. Lizzie went off food for 6 months before, and it's not really a talked about subject. But basically what happens is leopard geckos, sometimes be it stress, breeding, something makes them go off their food. It's just it's one of them things that happens like ball pythons. There's not a reason for it really, but there's obviously something does cause it, but it's not a massive issue. The only thing you really got to watch out for is if you if you notice they've not eaten as much, just once a week record their weight. So record their weight 1 week. If you record it and it's 66 grams 1 week, then you record it in 2 weeks time and it's 65 grams, they're not losing a lot of weight. So it's not really a lot to worry about. It's just that they're not wanting to eat for some reason. But obviously if you do that same example, say you weigh them and they're 65 grams and 2 weeks later you weigh them and they're now 40 grams, alarm bell should be ringing your head and you should be ringing your local vet, because for a leopard gecko to lose a third of its body weight in 2 weeks is quite a serious problem, and it's probably a sign of parasites or there is another illness at play. So you're probably best off getting to the vet, sorting out that way, and that'll be the best way forward for you. Last thing that quite a common thing is stuck shed on their toes. Leopard geckos eat their shed, so they don't just shed it off and leave it in the cage like snakes. They actually eat their own shed. Hence why you'll probably never find a leopard gecko skin in their enclosure, because they eat it as they peel it off with their jaws. They actually eat it. But obviously sometimes when they do this, they can leave a little bit of skin on their toes and they don't get it off. So the way to get that off really is to give them a nice warm bath. There is a bathing video on the channel, and then just use a Q-tip or something soft just to kind of slowly work it out. Don't rush it, don't force it, because the more you force it, the more damage you'll do. And just slowly get the skin off that way. Normally it's perfectly fine. One way you can assist, so make sure it doesn't happen in the future, is provide a moist hide. What I mean by a moist hide is on the cold side and close to where your cold hide is. Just put another hide down there. Probably one of the bottom top ones, like the gecko hides that we sometimes use, where like you got a base and you got a top on top of it. All you'll do is get the base, put some sphagnum moss in there or some sort of moss in there, put the lid on, chuck it in the cold corner, and then obviously that will be your humid hide. And then when the gecko feels like it needs to shed a little bit, the humidity in that hide can help them shed better and can just help deal with any shedding problems that they might be having. So we got towards the end of the video. So we're just going to do a quick, so as a recap, obviously leopard geckos, very common pet. You'll find them in most pet stores. Wonderful pets. They've got character to them. They're definitely worth getting if you want one. The only thing is, obviously, you've just got to be aware that this isn't a bearded dragon that's going to be out and about all day. This is going to be an animal you're going to see for a couple of hours every day, probably, if you're lucky. So as long as you're happy with that, perfect pet. So we will see you lot on our next video.